For almost 3 years, I dreamed about one moment. Coming home. I stood outside the airport with one suitcase, one backpack, and a heart full of excitement. I smiled as I looked at the gifts I had bought. My mother's favorite perfume. A watch for my father. A new phone for my younger sister. Even a leather jacket for my older brother, Daniel. I can't wait to see their faces, I whispered to myself. I had spent nearly all my savings on those gifts. It didn't matter. My family had supported me before I left, and I believed they deserved every penny I had earned. I took a taxi home without calling anyone. I'll surprise them, I said with a grin. The closer we got to my neighborhood, the faster my heart beat. When the taxi stopped, I looked at the house where I had grown up. It still looks the same, I said softly. I paid the driver, picked up my bags, and walked toward the front door. I noticed several expensive cars parked outside. Maybe they're celebrating something, I thought. I smiled again. Before knocking, I heard voices inside. My mother's voice made me stop. I still can't believe he never questioned us, she said. Someone laughed. It was Daniel. He was too busy working, he replied. As long as he believed we were struggling, he kept sending money. My smile disappeared. I slowly stepped closer to the window. Dad spoke next. If he ever finds out about the house, everything will fall apart. I froze. The house? What are you talking about? My mother asked. Daniel answered without hesitation. He won't find out. We sold the old house 2 years ago. The money paid for this place. He still thinks this is the same family home. I felt my knees weaken. Sold the house? The house my grandfather built? The house I believed still belonged to all of us? My mother sighed. I feel guilty sometimes. Daniel laughed again. Guilty? For what? He was making good money overseas. We simply let him keep helping. Dad spoke quietly. He trusted us. So? Daniel replied. Trust doesn't pay bills. My chest tightened. Every overtime shift. Every lonely holiday. Every birthday I spent eating instant noodles because I wanted to save money for them. None of it had mattered. Mom asked, what if he comes home one day without telling us? Daniel answered confidently. He won't. Besides, if he does, we'll tell him we had no choice. Dad stayed silent. That silence hurt almost as much as Daniel's words. I remembered every phone call. We're struggling. Your father's medicine is expensive. The roof needs repairs. We might lose the house. I believed every word. I worked double shifts. Skipped meals. Ignored my own health. I kept sending money because I thought I was saving my family. Instead, I had been paying for the life they built without me. I leaned against the wall, trying to breathe. This can't be real, I whispered. Then I heard my sister's voice. Has anyone heard from Ethan lately? My heart jumped. I miss him. There was a long silence. Finally, Daniel answered. Forget about him. He's probably happier over there. I don't think so, my sister said. He always sounded lonely. Mom sighed again. He made his own choice. Those words cut deeper than anything else. My own choice? I remembered crying alone before every night shift. I remembered missing Dad's birthday because I couldn't afford the flight home. I remembered promising Mom, just a little longer. I'll save enough, and we'll all be together again. She had thanked me every single time. Now I knew those tears had been lies. I looked down at the gift bags in my hands. The perfume. The watch. The phone. The jacket. They suddenly felt heavy. I wanted to walk inside and demand answers. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask why. But my feet refused to move. Inside the house, glasses clinked together. Daniel laughed again. Here's to new beginnings. Everyone raised a glass. Everyone except me. I stood outside in complete silence, listening to the celebration that my sacrifices had paid for. The family I had trusted more than anyone had built their happiness on my loneliness. Tears filled my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. At that moment, I understood one painful truth. I had not come home to my family. I had come home to strangers who only loved what I could give them. I stayed behind the fence until the lights inside the house grew dim. My hands were shaking. Don't go in, I whispered to myself. Not yet. I picked up my suitcase and quietly walked away before anyone noticed me. Every step felt heavier than the last. Instead of finding a hotel, I spent the night sitting on a bench in the town park. I couldn't sleep. One question kept repeating in my head. How long have they been lying to me? The next morning, I put on an old cap and sunglasses before walking back into my neighborhood. I didn't want anyone to recognize me. The old mailbox still stood outside the house. When no one was around, I quietly opened it. Inside were several envelopes. One of them caught my attention. It had my name written on it. My heart raced. I opened it carefully. It wasn't a letter for me. It was a bank statement showing another transfer I had sent nearly 2 years earlier. Someone had written across it with a pen. Paid. I frowned. What does that mean? I slipped it into my backpack and walked away before anyone came outside. Across the street stood the small cafe where I used to meet my childhood best friend, Ryan. When I walked in, he looked up from the counter. For a second, he stared at me. Ethan? I forced a weak smile. Hey. He rushed over and hugged me. I can't believe you're here. It's been a while. A while? He laughed. Almost 3 years. Why didn't you tell anyone you were coming home? I wanted to surprise everyone. His smile slowly disappeared. Something's wrong. I looked down. I need you to answer one question. Anything. What has everyone been saying about me? Ryan looked uncomfortable. You really don't know? I don't. He sighed. Ethan, your family told everyone you stopped caring about them. I felt my stomach twist. What? They said you rarely called. I called every week. They said you hardly sent any money. I sent almost everything I earned. Ryan stared at me in disbelief. They also said you planned to stay overseas forever. I never said that. I know now. I rubbed my forehead. So, everyone thinks I abandoned my family? He nodded slowly. I'm sorry. For a moment neither of us spoke. Ryan finally broke the silence. I always wondered why your mother looked so comfortable if things were really that bad. What do you mean? They bought new furniture. Daniel drove a new truck. Your dad stopped working months ago. I closed my eyes. So every story they told me. Ryan finished the sentence. Was a lie. I thanked him and left the cafe before my emotions overwhelmed me. As I walked through the neighborhood, an elderly voice called my name. Ethan? I turned around. Mrs. Harris, my old neighbor, stood outside watering her flowers. She smiled sadly. I knew you'd come back one day. I walked over. It's good to see you. You've lost weight. I worked a lot. She nodded. I know. You do. I saw the delivery driver bringing packages almost every month. I knew you were sending money. I swallowed hard. Did my parents ever talk about me? Her smile faded. They told everyone you had forgotten them. I looked away. That wasn't true. I never believed it. Tears burned my eyes. She reached into her pocket and handed me a small envelope. I've kept this for over a year. What is it? It arrived while your parents were away. Daniel came later and asked me if any mail had been delivered. And? I lied. I stared at her. I told him nothing had arrived. Why? Because something about him didn't feel right. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter from the overseas company where I worked. It confirmed a large bonus I had earned. Attached was another page. The payment had already been transferred to the bank account my family asked me to use. I laughed bitterly. They received everything. Mrs. Harris touched my shoulder. Ethan. I kept believing they needed help. You have a kind heart. I had a blind heart. She sighed. Sometimes those two things look the same. Her words stayed with me as I walked away. I stopped outside the old family photo hanging in the window of a closed photography shop. I remembered the day it was taken. Back then, I believed smiles could never lie. Now I knew better. Every birthday I missed. Every holiday I spent alone. Every extra shift I accepted. Every promise I made to myself that it would all be worth it. They had turned my love into their excuse. For years, I blamed myself for not doing enough. Now I finally understood the truth. I had done everything I could. They were the ones who had chosen deception over love. As the sun began to set, I looked toward the house one last time. I won't confront them today, I whispered. First, I'll learn every secret they've buried. For the first time since coming home, I wasn't searching for my family anymore. I was searching for the truth. I left my hometown before sunrise. I couldn't bear another minute of walking those streets filled with lies. About 20 miles away, I found a small roadside motel. The sign outside flickered, and the paint on the walls had started to peel. The woman behind the reception desk looked up and smiled. "Good morning. Need a room?" "Just for a few days," I replied. She handed me a form. "My name's Emma." "I'm Ethan." She noticed my tired face but didn't ask any questions. "Room 12, she said gently. "If you need anything, just let me know." "Thanks." I carried my bag inside, closed the door, and finally allowed myself to cry. Not because I was weak. Because I was exhausted. 3 years of sacrifice had turned into one terrible truth. That evening, I walked outside for some fresh air. Emma was locking the office door. "You haven't eaten all day," she said. "I wasn't hungry." "I don't believe you." I managed a small smile. "You're very observant." "It comes with the job." She pointed toward a small diner across the road. "Come on. My treat." "I can't let you do that. You can pay me back by not refusing." For the first time in days, I agreed. We sat in silence until the food arrived. Finally, she asked, "Running from something?" I looked at my coffee. "More like running from people." She nodded. "You don't have to explain." "I appreciate that." After another moment, I spoke anyway. "I came home to surprise my family." "And?" "I found out they had been lying to me for years." She didn't interrupt. "They used my money to build a new life while pretending they were struggling." "I'm sorry." "So am I." Emma stirred her tea. "My father used to say something." "What was that?" "The people who hurt you don't get to decide who you become." I repeated those words quietly. "They don't get to decide who I become." She smiled. "Exactly." The next morning, I drove back to town before anyone could recognize me. I parked near the local records office. If Daniel had sold our old house, there had to be paperwork. After paying a small fee, I searched through property records. The clerk handed me several copies. I read each page carefully. The sale had happened 2 years earlier. Daniel had signed most of the documents. But something caught my eye. My father's signature appeared on every page. My mother's did too. They had all known. My hands tightened around the papers. Outside the office, I called Ryan. "Can you meet me?" "Of course." 20 minutes later, he sat beside me in my car. "What did you find?" I handed him the documents. His eyes widened. "So they really sold it?" "Yes." He looked uncomfortable. "Ethan, there's something else." "What?" "I heard Daniel telling people you plan to marry someone overseas." I frowned. "I've never even been engaged." "I know. Why would he say that?" Ryan sighed. "Maybe he wanted everyone to believe you weren't coming back." The pieces finally started fitting together. If everyone believed I had started a new life, nobody would question why my family spent my money. Nobody would ask why they sold the house. Nobody would expect me to return. That afternoon, I parked near my parents' house again. From across the street, I watched quietly. My mother stepped outside. She looked older than I remembered. She held a letter in her hands. She read it, wiped away a tear, then quickly hid it inside her handbag before going back inside. "Guilt," I whispered. "She's feeling guilty." But guilt hadn't stopped her. Fear had kept her silent. Later that evening, I returned to the motel. Emma noticed the papers in my hands. "Bad day?" I found proof. She looked at me carefully. "And how do you feel?" "I want to expose them." "Then why don't you?" I hesitated. "Because they're still my family." She nodded. "That's what makes betrayal hurt so much." I sat down across from her. "What if I confront them tomorrow?" "What do you hope will happen?" "I don't know." "They'll apologize?" "Maybe." "And if they don't?" I looked away. I hadn't thought that far. Emma leaned forward. "Don't make your next decision while you're still bleeding." I stayed silent. "You've spent years letting other people decide your life," she continued. "Don't let your pain make this decision too." Her words settled deep inside me. For the first time since coming home, I realized revenge wasn't my only choice. I could disappear. I could expose them. Or I could rebuild myself first. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Daniel's voice. "Trust doesn't pay bills." Then I remembered Emma's words. "The people who hurt you don't get to decide who you become." Those 2 sentences fought inside my mind until sunrise. When morning finally came, I looked at my reflection in the motel mirror. I won't be the man they expected me to remain, I said quietly. They took my money. They stole my trust. But they will not steal the rest of my life. For the first time since everything fell apart, I felt something stronger than anger. I felt determination. And I knew my story was only beginning. I spent the next morning staring at the stack of papers on my motel table. Property records. Bank transfers. Copies of my overseas payments. Every page told the same story. My family hadn't made one mistake. They had made a choice. I picked up my phone and searched for a lawyer. An hour later, I sat across from a man named Mr. Carter. He looked through the documents quietly. Finally, he looked at me. Mr. Ethan, did you ever give your brother permission to handle your financial matters? No. Did you know the family house had been sold? I found out 3 days ago. He nodded. You have legal options. I don't want revenge. What do you want? I took a deep breath. I want the truth. The law is a good place to start. He pointed at one document. These signatures deserve a closer look. You think they are fake? I'm saying they should be examined. For the first time in days, I felt hope. As I left the office, my phone rang. An unknown number. Hello? The voice on the other end trembled. Ethan? I froze. Lily? My younger sister started crying. I've been looking for you. How did you get my number? Ryan gave it to me. I stayed silent. I didn't know you were back, she whispered. I wanted to surprise everyone. I'm so sorry. For what? I heard Mom and Dad arguing after you disappeared again. They kept saying they should have told you the truth. You knew nothing? I swear, Ethan. They never let me see the bank papers. Daniel always said it was adult business. I believed her. Her voice carried confusion, not guilt. Can we meet? She asked. An hour later we sat in a quiet park. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. You've lost so much weight. I worked hard. I know. She lowered her head. I thought you stopped calling because you forgot us. I called every week. What? They told me you were always busy. I laughed bitterly. They lied to both of us. She covered her face. I feel sick. You don't have to apologize for something you didn't do. I should have asked more questions. You were just a kid when I left. She reached into her bag. I found this in Daniel's room last month. She handed me a folder. Inside were copies of tax notices and business records. Mr. Carter had been right. Daniel's company owed a large amount of money. Some property papers also looked suspicious. I think he's hiding something, Lily whispered. I think so too. She grabbed my hand. Please don't hate Mom and Dad forever. I looked away. I don't know what I feel anymore. They are scared. They should be. They still love you. I closed the folder. If they loved me, why was lying so easy? She had no answer. That evening, I returned to the motel. Emma noticed my expression. You met someone. My sister. How did it go? She knew almost nothing. Emma smiled gently. Sometimes innocent people get trapped inside other people's lies. I know. So what happens now? I looked at the folder in my hands. I let the law uncover the truth. And your heart? It needs more time. Emma nodded. That's fair. As I walked back to my room, I realized something important. 4 years, I had begged for my family's love. Now I was fighting for something much more valuable. My self-respect. No matter what happened next, I promised myself one thing. I would never again let anyone convince me that sacrificing everything was the same as being loved. A week passed before Mr. Carter called me. Ethan, I have news. I'll be there in 20 minutes. When I arrived at his office, he placed several papers on the desk. The authorities have opened an investigation into Daniel's company. I stared at him. Already? Yes. The tax records your sister gave us raised serious questions. I took a deep breath. I didn't expect it to happen so fast. The truth has a way of catching up. For the first time in weeks, I felt the weight on my chest become a little lighter. As I walked out of the office, Ryan called me. Have you heard? What happened? Daniel's business partners walked away this morning. What? They don't want to be connected to the investigation. I remained silent. Ryan continued, People are talking. Everyone knows something is wrong. I never wanted to destroy him. I know. But he made his own choices. That afternoon, I drove past Daniel's office. The parking lot was almost empty. Two men carried boxes out of the building while another locked the front door. Across the street, I watched without saying a word. This wasn't revenge. These were consequences. Later that evening, my phone rang again. This time I recognized the number. Mom. I let it ring until it stopped. A second later, another call came. Then another. Finally, I answered. Hello? Ethan. She whispered through tears. Please don't hang up. What do you want? I need to see you. Why now? We need to talk. We had 3 years to talk. I know. No, you don't. She began crying. I made terrible mistakes. You made choices. I was afraid. So was I. She stayed silent. I worked double shifts because you said Dad needed medicine, I continued. I skipped meals because you said the house would be taken away. I'm sorry. I believed every word. I never wanted this. But you accepted it. She couldn't answer. After a long silence, I finally said, I'm not ready to forgive you. She quietly replied, I understand. I ended the call. Back at the motel, Emma was sitting outside with 2 cups of coffee. I guessed you might need one. I accepted the cup. Thanks. She looked at my face. Your mother called. How did you know? You look torn. I thought hearing her apologize would make me feel better. And? It didn't. Emma nodded. Because an apology can't erase years of pain. I hate feeling like this. You don't hate your feelings. What do I hate? You hate what they did to you. I looked down at the coffee. I keep waiting to feel happy that everything is falling apart for Daniel. Do you? I slowly shook my head. No. What do you feel? Sad. Emma smiled gently. That's because you're not like him. I wanted justice. And justice is happening. I thought it would make me feel stronger. It will. When? When you stop measuring your life by his failures. Her words stayed with me. The next morning, Ryan called again. You won't believe this. What happened now? Creditors showed up at your parents' house. I closed my eyes. They're asking for Daniel. And? Nobody knows where he is. Later that afternoon, Lily sent me a message. Mom hasn't stopped crying. Dad barely speaks. Daniel refuses to answer anyone's calls. I read the message several times before replying. Take care of yourself. None of this is your fault. She answered almost immediately. Will you ever come home? I stared at the screen. After a long pause, I typed only 4 words. I don't know yet. That evening, Emma and I sat outside the motel watching the sunset. She broke the silence first. What are you thinking? I spent years believing revenge would heal me. And now? I don't think revenge was ever what I wanted. What did you want? A family. She smiled sadly. I'm sorry they couldn't be that for you. I looked toward the fading sunlight. I can't control what they did. No. But I can control what I become. She nodded. And that's where your future begins. For the first time since returning home, I believed those words. Daniel's world was collapsing. My parents were finally facing the truth they had hidden for years. But I no longer wanted to stand and watch them fall. I wanted to keep walking forward. Because I finally understood something that had taken me years to learn. Real victory wasn't watching the people who hurt me lose everything. Real victory was refusing to lose myself with them. 3 days later, my phone rang again. This time it was Lily. Ethan? I'm here. Dad wants to see you. I stayed quiet. He said he won't ask for forgiveness, she continued. He just wants one chance to tell you the truth. I closed my eyes. Where? The old fishing lake. I'll be there. The next afternoon, I drove to the lake where my father used to take me as a child. He was already sitting on an old wooden bench. For a moment, neither of us spoke. You've grown thinner, he finally said. I've had a lot to carry. He lowered his head. I know. No, Dad. You know now. He nodded slowly. You're right. I sat beside him, leaving enough space between us. What did you want to tell me? He took a long breath. I failed you. I looked at the water. That's only the beginning. I know. Another silence followed. Then he spoke again. The first year you worked overseas, everything you sent really helped us. I never regretted helping. I know. He rubbed his hands together. Then Daniel started making promises. What kind of promises? He said he could double the money if we invested in his business. And you believed him? Your mother and I did. I shook my head. So that's how it started. Yes. When the business began losing money, he begged us not to tell you. I laughed bitterly. So instead, you asked me for more. He couldn't meet my eyes. We thought we could fix everything before you came home. You had 3 years. I know. Why didn't you answer my questions? Because every lie needed another lie. His voice cracked. I hated myself every time you called. I remembered every conversation. Don't worry about us, son. We're proud of you. Everything will be fine. Now those words sounded completely different. I looked at him. Did you know about the house? Yes. Did you agree to sell it? He nodded. I signed the papers. The answer hurt more than I expected. Why? I was scared. Scared of what? Daniel said we'd lose everything if we didn't. So you chose to lose me instead. Tears rolled down his face. I never wanted that. But it happened. He covered his face with his hands. I kept every letter you sent. I frowned. What? They're in a box at home. I wrote dozens of letters. I know. Then why did you never answer? His shoulders shook. Daniel hid most of them. I stared at him. What did you say? He intercepted your letters before your mother could read them. I felt my chest tighten. I thought you ignored me. No. I waited for replies that never came. I'm sorry. I stood up and walked a few steps away. Years of confusion suddenly made sense. The silence. The distance. The unanswered questions. My father slowly walked over. I should have stopped him. Yes. I was weak. Yes. I was afraid of losing my family. I looked at him with tears in my eyes. And because of that, you lost it anyway. He nodded. I deserve that. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. The wind moved gently across the lake. Finally, he reached into his jacket and handed me a small envelope. I brought something. I opened it. Inside was one of my old letters. The paper had turned yellow. I recognized my handwriting immediately. At the bottom I had written, "No matter how hard life gets, coming home to all of you will always be worth it." My vision blurred. I believed every word, I whispered. I know. He looked at me with broken eyes. I can't ask you to forgive me. You can't. I only wanted you to know the truth. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my pocket. For years, I thought I wasn't enough. He shook his head. You were always enough, Ethan. No. I looked at him one last time. I was the only one who never stopped being a family. He began crying again. I hope one day you'll find peace. I took a deep breath. I think I already have. He looked surprised. I finally know the truth. As I walked back to my car, I didn't feel the anger that had followed me for weeks. The pain was still there. The memory still hurt. But I finally had the answers I had searched for since the day I came home. Understanding my father's mistakes didn't erase them. It didn't rebuild the years we had lost. But it freed me from wondering why. And for the first time in a very long time, that was enough to let me keep moving forward. 6 months passed after my meeting with Dad. For the first time in years, I stopped waking up with anger. Instead, I woke up with purpose. One morning, Emma knocked on my motel room door. Are you ready? She asked. I smiled. I've been ready for weeks. She laughed. Then let's stop talking and start building. Using the skills I had learned overseas, I rented a small workshop and started a construction and repair business. The first few weeks were slow. One afternoon I sighed and looked at the empty office. What if nobody hires me? Emma smiled. Someone will. How can you be so sure? Because honest work always finds honest people. The next morning, my phone rang. Hello? Is this Ethan Construction? Yes. I need someone to repair my roof. I'll be there this afternoon. That small job led to another. Then another. Within 2 months, I had more work than I could handle alone. Ryan stopped by one evening. I heard you're hiring. I laughed. News travels fast. So, do I get an interview? You get the job. He grinned. I knew being your friend would pay off someday. Working beside Ryan reminded me of happier days. Days before lies had changed everything. One afternoon, Lily visited my office. She looked around and smiled. I'm proud of you. Thank you. You built all of this yourself. I finally built something nobody could take away. Her smile faded. I wish things had been different. So do I. She hesitated. Mom asks about you every day. I stayed quiet. Dad keeps your old letters on his bedside table. I looked out the window. I hope they find peace. And Daniel? I took a slow breath. What about him? He was arrested yesterday. I closed my eyes. So it's finally over. The court denied his request for bail. I didn't celebrate. I didn't smile. Instead, I felt a quiet sadness. Not because he was innocent. Because he had destroyed his own life one selfish choice at a time. A week later, Emma found me sitting outside after work. You've been thinking. I heard Daniel was arrested. How do you feel? I expected to feel victorious. And? I don't. She sat beside me. Sometimes justice doesn't feel like winning. It feels like losing everything that should have been. She nodded. I understand. I keep remembering when we were kids. What do you remember? He taught me how to ride a bicycle. Emma smiled gently. People aren't born as villains. I know. They become the result of the choices they keep making. I looked toward the sunset. I wish he had made different choices. So do I. Months continued to pass. My business grew stronger. I hired 2 more workers. Customers recommended me to their friends. For the first time in my life, people trusted me because of who I was, not because of what I could give them. One evening, Ryan walked into my office carrying a newspaper. Look at this. The headline filled the front page. Local business owner expands company after returning home. I laughed. I never imagined seeing my face in the newspaper. You earned it. No. I smiled. I rebuilt it. That night, Emma and I walked through the town square. She reached for my hand. I've been meaning to ask you something. What is it? Are you finally happy? I thought carefully before answering. I'm healing. She squeezed my hand. I'll take that. I smiled. You've been part of that healing. She looked at me with warm eyes. And you've reminded me that good people still exist. When I reached home that evening, I looked around my small apartment. It wasn't large. It wasn't expensive. But every chair, every tool, and every photograph inside had been earned honestly. Nobody had lied to give it to me. Nobody had stolen it from me. I had built it with my own hands. As I stood by the window, I realized something that once seemed impossible. My family's betrayal had nearly destroyed me. Instead, it had forced me to become stronger than I had ever imagined. Daniel had lost his freedom. My parents had lost the comfortable life they built on deception. But I had found something they could never take from me. My dignity. My future. And, finally, myself. Almost 2 years passed. Some mornings, I still remembered the pain of that day when I came home expecting hugs and found betrayal instead. But the memories no longer controlled me. They reminded me how far I had come. One afternoon, I stood outside the front door of my new house. It wasn't the biggest house in town. It wasn't built with stolen money or hidden lies. It was built with my own hands. Emma walked up beside me and smiled. So, how does it feel? I looked at the wooden porch I had built myself. It feels like peace. She slipped her hand into mine. You earned every brick. No, I said with a smile. We earned it. She laughed. I was wondering when you'd finally say that. I opened the front door. Welcome home. She looked around the living room. It's beautiful. It doesn't remind me of the old house. Does that make you sad? I shook my head. No. What does it make you feel? Free. A few days later, Lily came to visit. She hugged me tightly. I've missed you. I've missed you too. She looked around the house. I wish Mom and Dad could see this. I stayed quiet. Then she handed me an envelope. Mom asked me to give you this. I looked at the handwriting on the front. I recognized it immediately. I waited until Lily left before opening it. Inside was a short letter. My dear Ethan. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. Every day I remember the son who trusted me more than anyone else. I broke that trust. Your father and I live with that regret every single day. I don't expect you to come back. I only hope you continue living the happy life you deserve. I will always love you. Mom. I folded the letter carefully. For several minutes, I simply sat in silence. Emma found me in the living room. You read it? I nodded. What are you thinking? I believe she finally told the truth. And how does that feel? It came too late. Emma sat beside me. You don't have to answer. I know. But I think I should. That evening, I picked up a pen and began writing. Mom? Thank you for finally telling me the truth. The past cannot be changed, and the years we lost cannot be returned. I don't carry anger anymore. I carry lessons. I truly hope you and Dad find peace. As for me, I already have. Take care. Ethan. I sealed the envelope without another word. When I dropped it into the mailbox the next morning, I didn't feel sadness. I felt closure. Several weeks later, Ryan visited my office. You've become a busy man. I laughed. I remember when I had no customers. And now you have too many. He looked around proudly. You deserve this. Thank you. Before leaving, he stopped at the door. You know something? What? The whole town knows the truth now. I smiled softly. I don't need people to choose my side. They already have. I shook my head. The only opinion that matters now is the one I have of myself. Ryan grinned. That's the Ethan I remember. That evening, Emma and I sat on the porch of our home, watching the sun disappear beyond the hills. She rested her head on my shoulder. If you could speak to the man who came home 2 years ago, what would you tell him? I smiled sadly. I'd tell him not to be afraid. Only that. I'd tell him that losing the wrong people makes room for the right ones. She squeezed my hand. And did you find the right people? I turned toward her. I did. She smiled. So did I. I looked at the house once more. When I first came home, I thought my family had stolen everything from me. I was wrong. They took my trust. They took my savings. They took the home I believed would always be waiting for me. But they never took my ability to stand up again. They never took my honesty. They never took my hope. Home was never the old house my grandfather built. Home was the life I built after refusing to let betrayal define me. As the evening breeze moved gently through the trees, I smiled without forcing it. The people who had lied to me would spend the rest of their lives living with their choices. I would spend the rest of mine living with peace. And for the first time in many years, I finally understood that the greatest victory was never revenge. It was becoming the person I was always meant to be.